This is another episode of Design Your Dream Home with Doug and Steve. And now the architects, Doug Patt and Stephen Chung.
You are watching or listening to the Design Your Dream Home with Doug and Steve. I am Steve, and that is Doug. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning. Good to see you, Stephen.
How are you?
Doing good, man. How you doing?
Okay, well, as you know, we decided that it made the most sense to do this podcast at our home studios, our home offices, because we could control the environment. But right now, my environment is leaf blowers because it's finally a sunny day.
Yes.
There are lots of leaf blowers, so I apologize if that happens intermittently. And I'm going to also figure out how I can stop that, just stop it, generally speaking. You also have something going on at your place.
Yeah, our septic system failed, which is absolutely wonderful. And so the front yard was a little mucky, and I was wondering why the grass was growing so well in one spot for the last couple of months. And then the guys came to mow, and I've got kind of a large yard, so I have a team of people that descend and do it in about 20 minutes, with their super fast lawnmowers. Anyway, they didn't do a giant spot in the yard, and so I gave them a call, and they're like, "Yeah, man, it's soaking wet over there. Our equipment got stuck." So I looked into it, and of course, it's a failed septic field. So I've got the inspector and about 4 guys and a backhoe, and I've got a lot of people here today. So could get a little noisy.
And yeah, messy. That's a subject we should tackle one day because, whenever I'm doing projects out here, especially if it's not in the city, homeowners often require septic. They don't have a town sewer. And so basically the waste goes into a tank and into a field, a leaching field. And this is a typical way we do things out here in the suburbs or the woody suburbs. So every project that I'm brought into, it's one of the first issues that we deal with is septic, and they call it Title V. It basically means your septic passes for the number of bedrooms, it's up to date. And,
oh, right, yep.
And typically it's not. And so a big cost just is going towards designing a new septic system. Now suddenly it's not the building department, it's your local health authority. And as I've found, they're not always the most, they're not always rushing, let's say. So nope. It does create the additional cost considerations, time consideration. So good luck with that. I'm sure that's going to cost something. I hope that insurance.
Good Lord, no, insurance does not cover it. It's part of life. So it's going to be.
Well, that stinks.
Dirty joke, my friend.
Alrighty, so this is going to be a little different. I know we've talked about different aspects of a home, but we've talked a little bit less about practice of architecture, the profession of architecture, and both you and I have some strong feelings about it. And it's funny. I saw this television show called "Breaking the Magician's Code: Magic's Biggest Secrets Revealed," and it's basically a magician that's masked, and he's basically giving all the secrets away to all those tricks. He wondered about, how did they saw a woman in half, and you sort of wondered about all those things. So I watched a couple episodes, and I thought, I was happy to know and understand these things, and then I also thought, geez, he's kind of wrecked it for everybody.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how I feel about it in the end. Sometimes it's better not to know, but I think in our case, the profession of architecture, it's probably better that people know. That's kind of how I look at it, and I just wanted to talk about some, I don't know if they're tips or secrets, but just some insight into the way architects do things, and maybe a homeowner would like to kind of have a better insight into it, and I think ultimately it'll help. It'll help if they ever interact with an architect. So what do you think about that?
I think that's great. I am prepared to discuss this subject matter this morning, so let's do it.
All right, you go first.
Well, my first tip, so there are 3 things that I always tell a client, so I'm going to go through those today. My first tip is that projects always take longer than you think. I don't think I have ever worked on a job that has finished more quickly than we thought. In fact, many times these jobs kind of drag on at least months, not years, hopefully. Yeah. So, but the challenge is that it's a time-consuming process if you choose to do it right. If you choose to do it poorly, it can get even worse. So, if you're going to hire an architect, there is, there's a series of design phases, and then we get into construction documents where we draw the project and we put together a set that the contractor works from, and then of course there's construction. So, that takes up some time. But there are a number of things that clients do not anticipate. We've got a shop drawing process, for example. So many of the trades, like a mill worker or a steel worker, they're going to put together drawings that have to be checked by the architect before they can even fabricate these things. So that can slow things down a little bit. There are always changes that are going to be made during a project, right? So the architect is going to make changes and the contractor is going to make changes. Really, the owner makes the most changes in this process, in my experience. And then, of course, there are construction delays, right? So you've got to get permits at the beginning and at the end, lots of them in the beginning. There are delays that are associated with materials with the contractor, fabrication times for making things that are going into the project, and of course, scheduling conflicts. So at the end of the day, a project is always going to take longer than you think. And I would go into a project knowing that and add a certain percentage to your estimate, understanding that something is always going to get you.
Mm-hmm. That's a good tip. And my first tip actually has, it sort of follows along in parallel with what you're talking about. And it has to do with hiring an architect and knowing who you'll be working with. So you may hire a firm and have a name on that letterhead and think, oh, I'll be working with Doug. But the reality is that I may see Doug at that first meeting, and I'll be working with Ashton, or Ashton, our producer. I'll be working with Ashton, and Ashton may be a great guy, or maybe he's not a great guy. Maybe he's an inexperienced guy, or maybe he's an awesome guy. You don't know, but you really, really need to meet and interact with this person, because you will be with that person for at least a year, could be 2 years. That person will become intimately involved in your life. He knows your bathroom habits. He knows how you eat and cook and clean, and who cleans and who doesn't clean. He knows basically, or she knows every aspect of your life. I mean, if you're having a home designed, a custom home design, this is really the reality. You really kind of know the sleep schedules. You know that the person actually doesn't like to wake up early in the morning, doesn't want morning sun in his master bedroom. He wants it at noon or something, and basically orient the house a certain way because he doesn't want that bright sun in his morning. So the point being, you really, you'll be with this person, you'll be interacting with this person in a very intimate way for a very long time. And I've always found the best projects, I've always become pretty good friends, I would say, with clients, because it's inevitable. You just happen to get to know their family, you know their kids, you see them out, and it's like a long lost friend, because you spent more time with this person than, I don't know, often your own brother or something, or your own, some of your own best friends. So you really need to know who this person is and get to know that person. So it's really critical to know who that is. And I just want to relay a story. It's not just the small firm that has this kind of scenario. I worked in a big corporate office years ago, and the developer came into the office, and it was the big, song and dance where you had all these principals come in and lots of food on the table and fruits and a very nice setup in this big office, and basically the developer's thinking that, oh, look at, I get all of this service, and later in the process, what I learned also is that no, he's getting me. And only me. The principal is only going to come for those big meetings, that he'll be interacting with me every day. And later I was actually pretty surprised to learn that I was going to be doing most of the design and drawing. So it was really one or two people, not, looking in the office and seeing 30, 40 and thinking, wow, look at this horsepower I'm getting. No, this is the team you will be assigned. It's this guy, and he's got one assistant. And yeah, it's a big office and all of that. There's lots of principals, but they're really not involved in your project. Get to know this person. So I did get to know that developer quite well, and I would say that it turned out very well. I would just say that was probably more luck than anything else, because it just happened that we got along really well, and he really realized that, geez, he's just going to call me. He's interacting with me on almost a daily basis. And then certainly through construction, I mean, he was basically seeing me all the time. So that worked out really well, but it could have been bad, because he thought, oh, I'm working with this guy up here. No, he's not interacting with that guy at all. So long story is that find out who you're working with, who you'll be working with. Know that when you make this decision, you have to kind of I think respect each other, get along. You don't have to be great friends, but you really have to kind of get along and be able to, be comfortable with each other, feeling that you can really say what you want to say to this person. So the relationship is critical.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. My experience is that most clients don't realize that until, they're well into the process.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Tip number 2, Doug?
My second tip has to do with project cost. Again, when I first meet with a client, there are 3 things that I always tell them it's going to take longer. Number 2 is that a project inevitably costs more than you think it's going to. And I think it's a misconception that architects drive up the cost of a job. People hear that an architect's working with somebody and they're like, oh, it's going to be really expensive. And I think, most people think that, well, it's because there's an architect involved. And really my experience is that owners drive up the cost of a project. So an owner inevitably will choose, given lots of options, they're going to choose the best product, the most expensive material, the more complex solution. They're going to make changes and they're going to drive up the cost of a job. The wonderful thing about working with an architect is, at least up front, you can discuss these things. And so you can manage. You're managing the client, you're managing their expectations. So you're helping them. Let's talk about a roof, for example. So a client decides that, they're going to build a house and they want an asphalt roof. Well, when given the choice between a 20-year asphalt roof or a 30-year roof, they are inevitably, although they said in the beginning they're going to get a 10 or a 15 or a 20-year roof, they will buy the 30-year roof. That's just the way it works. Or they end up going to even more expensive solution. So, I think the challenge with clients is when you're working with them, as an architect, you want to give them the best solutions. And we inevitably will do that. We give them a series of design solutions, and we're always trying to find the best solution. And many times the challenge is the best solution does cost more. Not all the time, but inevitably it does. So project costs tend to increase. They rarely decrease. I do the meeting minutes for my project in Greenwich right now. I always do meeting minutes, and we've got a list of additions to the project and a list of subtractions to the project. And we're into the job. We're into construction now 3 months or so, or 2.5 months, and the additions to the project are 17, and the subtractions to the project are 3. So you really don't end up taking a lot out of a job. You end up putting a lot into the job. It's just the way it goes. And my experience is that owners really drive the cost of a project up.
No, this is a good point. I'm doing a house right now in Sarasota and just went appliance shopping with the owner.
Yeah.
I said that the contractor really based the budget that we're working with. He's given us an allowance of X for your appliances, which I thought was a pretty decent budget. And then when we went shopping, oh my God, look at this, side by side built-in refrigerator that costs $6,000 and $6,000, so $12,000 in refrigerators. And I said, "You want 2?" "Oh, yeah, I want 2, of course, for dinner parties, and of course I need 2 dishwashers." 2 dishwashers, okay. So very quickly I said, after this, they spent 3 times the allowance budget. I said, "Do you know that you've gone 3 times what the allowance is?" "I understand.
Yeah.
I need these things." "Okay, I just want to note this, that you've said that you really are, you understand that through your choice you're doing something a little extraordinary. The contractor has given us a pretty good budget based on his experience with this type of house, but you're really clearly going beyond, and you don't mind. You want this." I said, "Okay, I just want to be clear that later on you say, why did this cost this?" I said, "Remember with Doug's minutes, remember when?"
Yeah, man.
So
that's why you keep
important.
meeting minutes, because clients conveniently forget these things. They really do. And at the end of the job, they're like, why did our project cost that much money?
Right.
And they look at you like it's your fault. Right. So anyway, important.
So that's a great tip, Doug. You and I seem to be on the same page here without interacting beforehand to talk about what we're going to talk about.
Yeah,
because my second part has to do with value, but it has to do with money. And you had mentioned in your first tip about the different phases of a typical architect-client relationship. People sort of know about, let's say, design or schematic design and design development, construction drawings. These are some of the phases that an architect will go through as they're designing the project. And then we get to something called bidding negotiation, where we take the design and we're sort of issuing it out to different contractors to price. And the final is construction administration, where we're sort of going through the project with the contractor we've selected. Now every hour, every week, or whatever it is that we meet on job site, we sort of make sure that the project is being executed as we've designed it, and so on. But for me, I just wanted to talk about the bidding negotiation, because if you look at the percentages of a project, the biggest value is assigned is construction drawing. Because that's like this. I just want to pull it. Here's construction drawings for a project. It's this thick pile of paper that really gives all the instructions for the project. It's a very detailed set. It's maybe 50%. I don't know. It's a good amount of the design fee, of the fee. And the bidding negotiation will get something like 5 to 10%. What's your percentages, Doug, for bidding negotiation? What do you typically see?
Well, yeah, I would say you're 5 or 10%, I think, for bidding and negotiation.
So 5 or 10%. So it's considered kind of smaller in terms of relative importance. If you look at, let's say, 50% for the construction drawings, and maybe concept design, schematic designs 20 or something. It's something like this. So it's a 20, or maybe it's 15, 20, but basically 50 for construction documents. Bidding negotiation is a much smaller part. Construction administration is actually relatively small, given I think how important it is. And what I found is that the value really is in those last two phases: bidding negotiation, construction administration. I think people intuitively can understand that having an architect on the job site throughout construction is worth something. It's a big value. So that I think people understand. But that bidding negotiation is so critical. I'm going to tell you a quick story. Is that when I was a young architect in New York, we did a loft, and let's say the loft, but I don't remember exactly, but let's say it was a $100,000 construction budget, and that the design fee was 10% of that. So let's call it $10,000. In that case, the bidding negotiation would be $500 to $1,000 part of the fee, right? That's sort of if we break it down using our percentages.
Yeah.
So when we bid out the project for this loft, the construction prices and estimates came back. I think we sent it to 5. Came back at 100, 120, 150, 200,000. So you have all of these wildly different bids. And now we have to go through these bids. And basically, for this $500 fee you're paying me, you want me to potentially save you $100,000 or $20,000 or $30,000 or $50,000, meaning how much should that really be worth to you? It should be worth a lot more, because now this is really where I think almost the entire fee is right there by choice B contractor versus C. Choice A contractor that says, oh, I can do this for $90,000. It's actually less than your budget. I look at his bid and I think, wait a minute, this doesn't look right. He's missing something. Or I go to the guy that's a $200,000 bid and I say, he's crazy. And I find the bid actually it's $130,000. I think this guy's actually right on. This is the right guy. This is the right choice. I recommend this choice. And it's $30,000 over, but it's the right choice because he really has costed everything out. He knows he's really done a good job. He's very thorough. I think that this person, based on his work, based on his thoroughness, I think this really is the cost of the project, not the guy that's sort of saying it's $90,000 but missing things, or somehow I feel uncomfortable, or something is not quite right with this guy. But meaning the variance between 90,000, 30,000, 130,000, 200, it's a gigantic variance, and yet the value in my contract is that it's only worth this much to you, when in fact it really is worth this. I mean, to me, this is where an architect provides tremendous value just by looking at the contractor bid. And typically I get back these first bids and there's a number attached to it. I look through it and I say, wait a minute, you didn't include this. And they say, oh, it's going to be a little higher. But actually, wait a minute, you don't need that, you don't need that, you don't need that. This is way too high based on my experience. And that bid comes back completely different than that first bid. So that's like, I don't know, I find like so much of my work is right there. I don't know, how do you feel? How about you with that?
Well, our experience is like 30, 30, 30 in terms of percentages.
Okay.
But we do spend a ton of time on design. So schematic pre-design, schematic design development, all add up to about 30%.
Okay.
And then CDs at least 30%, depending on the job.
Yeah.
And then CA is about 30%. That includes the bidding and negotiation as well.
Okay.
So we're on the job once a week. Our hours probably getting cut in half or a third. But construction, that whole process, we end up building houses for a year to a year and a half just in construction. So it's going to be different for the kinds of jobs you're working on. But I completely agree. The biggest challenge I see with the construction or the bidding negotiation part is apples to apples, is judging bids one next to the other and making sure that you're able to judge them relative to one another. And that is a whole different, I mean, that's a very time consuming process to lay out to what we like to do, or I like to do now is I like to use old bids that are very good and very, very thorough. I take all the numbers out and then we hand over like PDF document to them. We say, this is, we go through them relative to the job, but we say, this is what's in the job. Produce your bid, and that way you can set them one next to the other then and know where their numbers are. And so I think the toughest part of that process is figuring out how to judge one contractor bid against another and do it equally.
No, that's a very good idea. So you give them a kind of form, we'll say, this is the way I want you to do it, right?
We have lately been doing that, and it's worked pretty well.
No. For example, what you're talking about is, like, for example, someone might just have a number, carpentry.
Yes.
And the other guy might have carpentry and then doors as some other number. You say, well, wait a minute, your carpentry actually includes doors. This guy doesn't include doors.
Yes.
And it's like that for every line item. You're like, how am I supposed to go back and forth?
Awful.
Exactly.
It's awful.
Okay.
But it's very time consuming, and I would say that we don't get paid enough money to do that.
Okay. All right. What's your third tip, Doug?
So my third tip goes along with the first two. A project is always going to end up being a bigger headache than you think it is. And I would say almost across the board, this almost always happens. And the reason being, because projects take longer and they cost more, they end up being a bit of a bigger headache. I mean, jobs, in my experience, always go through a kind of honeymoon phase, right? So you meet the client, you get chosen, you work with them, you go through all of these design phases with them, and things are awesome. They're peachy. It's going to be an amazing project, and we love you, and we love this, and you're awesome. And then you start construction, and inevitably people make mistakes and things fall through the cracks, even if you hire an architect. Yeah. So, our biggest job at that point is coordination. And there are always things that happen in everybody's bucket. And so miscommunications are an occurrence, and there are coordination issues, and things arrive on site that you didn't really expect were going to look the way they did because there was something that didn't get looked at, or appliances are ordered incorrectly, or the wrong, even down to an appliance having the wrong door swing on it, right? Or there's at the very beginning of the process, I lose sleep over the steel fabrication process, over when foundations are being poured, when demolition starts. I mean, you walk out onto a job site and you look at it and things are being ripped down, and they're being ripped down because you drew that, and you realize very quickly that, what you have created all of these consequences. Anyway, inevitably things go wrong, and the job just turns into sometimes what you didn't really expect. Working with Joe Moore for many, many years, and he has always said this, and it's always true. It's the thing you didn't see coming or didn't expect that always gets you. I mean, you can think I've got my bases covered everywhere, but you will always get nailed by something you just did not expect. And it's not just me, it's the contractor, it's the owner. So anyway, you've got to expect that things are going to take longer, they're going to cost more. And you know what? This is going to be a challenge. At some point, the job gets challenging, tempers might flare, people are going to disagree. And that's where the rubber meets the road. And that really proves you as a good architect or somebody that's not really good at the job, because you've got to manage the team and really manage the client's expectations. It's challenging.
Along those lines, I found, because you're right, somewhere in the process, everyone's going to make a mistake. And so you can somehow blame it on somebody else, which many do. Or what I found is that, especially you get a lot of respect from the contractor. If you tell the owner, you say, I wrote the wrong number down here on this drawing. They built what I drew. I made a mistake. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm going to work to fix that. The contractor really respects that and says, I got this guy's back. He's a good dude. And the homeowner if you look at all the decisions, all of it that's gone through the entire way, if it's been an open and good process, they say thank you for saying that, and usually it's okay. Usually they just appreciate that you've admitted that there's an error made, it was your fault, that you're going to try to fix it. Sometimes there's cost implications, but what I've found is that they're pretty okay with it. They understand you made a mistake. I work with a lawyer sometimes or an accountant. They made a mistake, and I can be mad at them. I get upset, but then the guy says, "Look, I'm really sorry. I made a mistake. I'm gonna fix this and do the best I can going forward and whatever." Yep. And I'm usually okay with it. I say, "Okay."
I totally agree. Honesty is always the best policy.
It happens.
Yep.
Okay, so this is my third tip, and after all this, we'll have to figure out why does anyone go through this process, right? Why even hire us and do this when they hear all these terrible these terrible things we're talking about? But okay, this is really something that having to do with a young architect, and maybe they have the wrong motivation, and it has to do with an architect caring more about the finished photography and awards ultimately than they do about the project, the homeowner. And admittedly, I think when you go through school and you go through the kind of star system where you have these famous teachers and everyone's so ambitious, and when they get the first opportunity, they pull out all the stops because they want to be a somebody. And sometimes being a somebody means creating a signature, a signature style. The new Doug Patt. Look at this fresh new guy on the scene, and maybe the homeowner doesn't want to be doesn't want that fresh new architecture. And instead of thinking of it like this is a service, and this person wants something pretty nice, but it's probably not going to be something insane that's going to get me on the cover of a magazine. That's not the time then to try to get on the cover of the magazine and disrespect or disregard what the owner is looking for, and try very hard to persuade them into doing something that they won't be happy with. That'll be more costly. It's just not the right fit. I think the key is probably to wait till you have that right fit where everyone's on the same page. I've found that every project that I've done, if you don't have that, no one's going to be happy. And the projects, very few that I've had that are, I would say, more progressive and I'm happy with, they wanted that. The owner wanted that. They didn't know what they wanted exactly, but they wanted that. When I was a young architect, the one time when I was trying to do something, or two times that it was for me. I was trying to do something for me. It was not good. It was a bad experience. I know of a case of a very well-known firm in Boston, known for lots of very nice boutique kind of work, but they did a house for someone in Western Mass. It was a very expensive, very crazy house that this architect is very persuasive, and got them to spend a lot of money to, I think, really support this architect's exploration and really do something quite artistic that, he's a teacher too. So in schools, he could say, look, students, look at the crazy thing I've done here. Show it to the magazine editor. Hey, let me get published in here. I'll say, wait, hey, when you build it, you got the cover. And so when the product was built, the homeowner was very unhappy with the result, very unhappy with the cost. And really, what could they do? They had already spent all this money on the fees, on the construction, on all of it. They basically said, the architect, you can't photograph the house.
Oh my gosh.
The architect, instead of saying, okay, well, we built this incredible thing, we got paid, it was okay, it didn't end up perfectly. They were crushed because in the end, all they wanted were those photos. And so without those photos, to again get them in this magazine, it was like an entire 2-year experience was lost in their minds. And that's just the wrong way to think about it. I think that when you're done, the homeowners to say, hey, I'd love for you to photograph this house for your portfolio, where I'm so happy with the result. Oh, thank you very much. That would be fantastic. Instead of everything I'm doing is just for those photographs. So it's a terrible kind of story, but it happens. And it goes back to some of the first things we talked about. You need to find that right relationship. It really needs to be, I don't know if it's equal exactly, but it really is one of mutual respect, mutual understanding, that we're all on the same page, and that we're going to be together for a couple of years. I know what you want. You know what I want. You really got to take care of me here. And I think in that case, the architect was doing it for themselves, and look what happened. So I don't know the moral is, because that architect has gone on to become incredibly famous. But unfortunately, you leave a trail of some unhappy people behind, including someone who spent a lot of money on their dream home to be sort of crushed.
Yeah.
So with that being said, Doug, can you figure out why anyone would go through this process with us?
Yeah, I mean, I understand. As you know, we're talking about probably the toughest things about the process here, and some of those things are hard to hear. However, we do something that we've learned how to do something that takes a long time to do really well, and that is to problem solve. And that's what I do all day long. I'm getting calls and responding to emails, and they're all problems, they're all challenges, they're questions. And I'm really good at solving problems, and I think I'm good at it because I've been doing it for almost 25 years, on and off, mostly on. So you've got to, working with a professional problem solver at the end of the day is going to get you a great project, hopefully. And so that's why I would say, working with an architect is a good idea.
Yeah, when it's good, it's really good. I finished this pool house in addition for this guy. We've become really good friends, and the times that he invites me and my two boys over there, and they swim, and we just sit there on the side and talk. And he's got his daughter swimming around, and he's just so happy and is so appreciative. And it's like those moments you think, it's not like it was on the cover of the magazine, and maybe actually it was, but it wasn't like that really gave me that much thrill. I was like, well, that's nice. But those moments where it's like, thank you for this, and I think, oh, you're welcome. Thank you for the opportunity. So I think that's the reason why I think that person really enjoyed the process, really loves the result. I enjoy the process, like the result. So I guess that's what we're always aspiring to do. And
I agree.
Really
personal relationships,
lining up having a great relationship.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, Doug, maybe we're slightly over here, but we still have to answer our question of the week, and it's a good one. So I just want to throw this one out at you. This is someone who actually asked me. So, my son is a high school senior and is considering architecture in college. Do you have any advice for him? He's good at math and also mechanically inclined. Do you think that this would be a good choice for him? So I know, Doug, we only got a couple minutes, but what do you think?
Oh my gosh!
This is another topic, right?
I do this for a living, like professionally on YouTube. More and more I think about a person's creativity or proclivity to be creative as extremely important in the field of architecture. Probably has to do with being or becoming a good problem solver. But the more young people I meet and ask me this question, it would seem that if they're really good at math, and they're kind of mechanically inclined, but they're not incredibly creative, I see them tend toward the engineering field. So when I look down, I look at years later what they're doing, I see that they ended up in more of an engineering kind of field. I think it's really important to be creative. You today don't have to be able to draw really well, although it's important to sketch. Mathematics is really not that important, although you need to think in mathematical terms for buildings. I would say if you're a hardworking young person and you tend toward being more creative than not, and you think you can hack the educational requirements, the long hours and the challenging environment, you're probably well suited to at least give it a shot. That's what I think.
And I'll make mine really quick. I don't think architecture is a profession or a course of study where you triangulate certain elements and think, oh, maybe I should do that. Meaning, I'm good at math, I'm mechanically inclined, I should do that. Yeah. You really should just like architecture and want to do it. Even as a young person, as a junior in high school, say, I want to be an architect. I want to do that. Not, I'm good at this, let me plug it into this formula. You should be an architect. Oh, I'll do that. Because you're going into the field with psychos like me that wanted to be an architect more than anybody could ever imagine since I was 9 years old. It wasn't like I'm good at this, maybe I'll do that. It was more like I want to do that. So I would say that if this guy doesn't really want to do that, he shouldn't do that.
Hey, you've been watching and listening to Design Your Dream Home with Doug and Steve. Have a great day. See you soon.
See you next time.